Hi guys, my name is Bobby. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my August wrap-up. So in August I read 10 books. So there's 10 books total read. I read 2 graphic novels, there was 3 DNFs, 5 novels. So my star ratings, I had 2 2-star, 3 3-star, 2 4-stars, and 2 5-stars. So let's get into it. The first book I read in the month of August was called Pretty Ugly Lies by Pamela Crane. This book is about a group of moms. Hopefully I can insert the image of the cover right here. This was an ebook that I read, and I gave it 3 stars. So this book starts out with, in the very first chapter, of a mom killing her husband and her children. So it starts off with a bang. And then the rest of the book, you meet these women who all live on the same street. There's 4 mothers, and they all live on the same street. And you learn about them and how they interact with each other. 2 are really best friends and the other 2 are best friends, so they kind of interact side by side. And as you get through the story, you figure out who, towards the end you figure out who killed her family and, why and all that stuff. So, I mean, it wasn't bad. I mean, you have, the 4 moms are called, sorry, I'm looking at my notes because it's middle of September now when I'm filming this, since I got a late start, and I read this literally in the first week of August. So let's see, there was Joe and Shayla, and June and Ellie are the 4 moms. June has an autistic son, and he's one of 4 kids, and she feels like she's drowning because her husband doesn't really help her at all with anything, and he kind of changes jobs a lot. And then you have Ellie, who has 2 kids who treat her like absolute garbage. They treat her like shit, literally like shit. And her husband doesn't really do anything to help that. And so, I mean, she's really depressed and feels like her family doesn't love or appreciate her. And then you have Joe, and her youngest daughter is abducted from a playground during her son's soccer game. And that's not a spoiler, because it's literally the very first chapter of the book and is a part of the entire book. And so she's dealing with that and the abduction and who could have done it and, all that fear that a mom would face. And then the last mom is Shayla. And Shayla is bipolar and really restless in her marriage. She's married and has 1 kid. But she just seems like one of those young moms that, got married too soon and is a little bit restless and wants to get out in the world and do things. So pros and cons, what I didn't like about this book was, Joe's story arc, with the abducted kid. You find out pretty quickly who abducted her and why. And once I did, it is the most asinine and stupid thing I've ever heard of. It is so far-fetched. It just wouldn't happen. And it was dumb. And so every time I got to her point of view, I would just skim read. Because it obviously wasn't that important. And same when you get the kidnapper's POV. I'd skim, because I was like, okay, they aren't going to kill the little girl, they're going to get her in the end, obviously, was my thought. It's like, and so, I mean, she was like, eh. June, her story is what got to me the most. I don't have 4 kids, I have 2.5, because I have a stepdaughter as well. But my son has autism. So her describing what it's like to be a parent with autism was very on point. And she did it in a way that was not demeaning or, how did I write it? The way she did it, it didn't undermine his diagnosis, and it didn't make it seem like, it kind of made it seem like a burden, which, it is to a degree, but it wasn't, it was very well done. The way she wrote it was very well done. It wasn't like in a pity, oh, poor me, oh, feel bad for me kind of way. It was just the struggle. The struggle is really real. Being a parent of a child with autism is not an easy road. I know a couple other booktubers who have autistic children, and it's not easy. Every day is a challenge, but, there is beauty and love in it. But the way she described it, I felt it. I was like, oh my gosh, I remember going through that myself. I've been there. I've done that with my son. So that, I really enjoyed the way she portrayed it, because a lot of times when autism is portrayed, they portray it as they're totally mute, or they can't do this, or they can't do that, and that's not like that for every autistic child. Every autistic child is different. Some are very high functioning and verbal and can do just about what everybody else does, only they're socially awkward, or you have some that are completely nonverbal and have problems with motor ability. It just depends, and the way she depicted it was very real. And I really enjoyed that part. But like her story was the one was the only one I was really invested in because I identified with her to a degree. And the reveals weren't that great. So, I mean, it was mediocre. It wasn't a terrible book. It wasn't, I would recommend reading it. And I liked what the author put at the end about not PTSD. Post-traumatic, that's PTSD, dumbass. Postpartum depression. And what a lot of moms suffer with postpartum depression and how it's not really addressed in the community as much as it should be. And I like that at the end she wrote an acknowledgement about that, about if you're suffering from postpartum depression, please seek help, and with the website and the hotline for moms who are suffering from that. And I appreciated that touch as well. So I mean, it was middle of the road, wasn't terrible, wasn't great, 3 stars. The second book I read in August was Girls' Night Out by Liz Fenton and Lisa Stanky. Oh, no, not Stanky. I totally butchered that. I am so sorry. And Lisa S. We'll just go with that. And I gave it 2 stars. I honestly got about, this was one of my DNFs. I got about 70, 80 pages in, almost 200. And it was so slow and boring. And like, it wasn't the kind of drama that I usually enjoy. It was very, very boring. This was also an ebook that I read on my Kindle. And so I literally skipped to the end to see who killed who, and that was it. I mean, 2 stars. Like, I do not understand the hype over this book at all. Like, it was not good. It was run-of-the-mill thriller at best. The third book I read was The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This book, oh man, this book is one of the heaviest hitting books I think I have read in a long time. Like, I'm not that huge of a fantasy reader. And when I got this book, like, I heard Maddie at Maddie Rose Reads talking about it. She was the main one that would not stop talking about it. So it was like, all right, if Maddie likes it, I'm going to pick it up and see. And she's more of a fantasy reader than I am. But I thought this was YA fantasy. Totally wrong. It's adult fantasy. But it's not high fantasy. The Poppy War is a book that takes place in it's kind of like China, almost like medieval China is the vibes that I got. A lot of Chinese lore and stuff like that. And I think it plays off, like, I'm such a terrible booktuber. Give me a break, I'm new. But there is a war in Chinese history that this kind of models after. But it's about our main character named Rin, who lives in this province that is really poor, and she's a poor person, and she takes this test to go to the best assassin military academy that there is in her country, and she does surprisingly well, and then the whole country goes to war, and she gets wrapped up in the war, and it gets to where they kind of figure out that she's got a special ability. But this isn't written as like a chosen one, you know, she's got special powers, blah, blah. It was not written like that. It was not that trope. There was a little of that, but I mean, everything that she had to do, she earned it. She busted her butt and earned everything she got in this book. This was a super fast read. I absolutely loved it. I cannot wait for its sequel. I highly recommend this book if you like fantasy at all. Again, it is not YA, and it's got a lot of like kind of Chinese history in it, loosely based, but this was a really good book. I highly enjoyed it. Now I forgot the star rating. Did I give it 4 or 5 stars? 4 stars. The next book I read in the month of August was Nevernight by Jay Kristoff, if I can fix it. No, I'd never read this book. Yes, this was my first time reading this book. This book and I have a history. I saw this hyped all over BookTube from Allie at Hardback Hoarder, Maddie at Maddie Rose Reads. Like, those 2 girls, like, had hyped this book to no end, and I thought it was YA. And so I was like, ugh, YA fantasy. It's probably going to be all tropey and ridiculous. But I was like, you know what? They've talked so highly about it, and they love it so much. I'm going to give it a shot. So I bought it off a book outlet, and I got it, and I kid you not, I started trying to read this twice, and I DNF'd it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. The writing style was really weird. There was a whole bunch of footnotes in it, and I'm just like, what is this? Like, and the way the style it was written in, when at the very beginning of this book, was so weird. I couldn't follow it. It was really hard for me to follow. So I DNF'd it twice. And then Julie, over at Pages and Pens, she had never read Nevernight, and so she decided to do this big, huge, booktube, internet-wide buddy read of Nevernight, and so I was like, you know what, I'm going to join it. Third time's a charm. If I don't like it this time, then it's just not meant to be, and I'll donate it. And I literally had Nevernight and its sequel, God's Grave, in my donate pile. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. Like, it's now or never. If I can't do it this time, I'm donating it to my library. And so we started it, and I figured, okay, a buddy read's going to help me get through it, because we have set spots that we stop at, so I don't feel, I feel the little push, but it's not going to be, you have to read this, or I won't feel as guilty. So we started the buddy read, and I got over that first hump, and oh my God, where has this book been all my life? Like, what, my God. Like, the first 100 pages was hard to get through, the way the writing style is. But then after that, it changes a little bit, and his writing style totally changes, and it's absolutely beautiful. This is the story of Mia Corvier, who is an assassin, or she's training to be one, at this prestigious assassin academy that is very hard to get into. And so this book is about her. It gives her past on why she is where she is now, and her at the academy, and her whole goal is to become a blade, which is an extreme assassin that works for the school in the Mother of Night. No, what do they call it? The Red Church. It's been a while. So to work for the Red Church as an assassin, where you were hired out to assassinate whoever for pay, and they make really good money, but it's a very dangerous job. So this is her story of how she got there and all that, and she has some little special powers of her own, but this is not, again, this is not a chosen one and blah, blah, blah. Like, she's not at all. Like, she goes through some shit, and she gets beat up and has to bust her butt to get where she gets. And so this isn't just, it's all handed to him. And I've heard people talk all the time about how Throne of Glass is such the amazing, about an assassin. Bitch, please. Meet Mia Corvier. This is how an assassin is. This is, you're being shown, not told. All through Throne of Glass, which is the only Sarah J. Maas book I've ever read, they tell you how great Selena is and how great of an assassin she is, but they never show you. She never really does anything. With this, no, they show you why Mia is so good and why she's such a badass, and it was just amazing. 5 stars. I'm reading God's Grave right now. I'm almost finished with it. I'll have my thoughts on that in my September wrap-up. But this was amazing. Like, now I'm so sucked into this series. I am so glad I gave this the 3rd try, because otherwise this would have been donated, and I'm so glad I gave it another shot. Can't wait for Dark Dawn to come out next September. I'm really bummed it wasn't this September, but it's fine, Mr. Kristoff. I'll wait, because this was totally worth it. Again, 5 stars. If you have not read this and you like fantasy at all, read it. Just read it. The first 100 pages are a little tough to get through, and the footnotes are a tiny bit distracting, but just read it. The next book I read in the month of August was The Stolen Marriage by Diane Chamberlain. This was a DNF, which really makes me sad, because it's got this beautiful cover where, you can feel the rain, the rain is raised. And let me tell you why I DNF'd this. So I didn't even rate this, because I didn't feel it was fair, because I literally got 50 pages in, and I DNF'd, which is unusual. I usually try to give it 100, but this was going down this trope line that I really cannot stand, and it's one of the reasons why I don't read many contemporaries. So the main trope in this one is this woman, which I can't even remember her name. What's her name? Tess. Okay. So that's Tess. It takes place in the 40s, World War II. Yeah, 1944. So right in the middle of World War II. And she is in love. She's been in love with this guy for years. He's been her neighbor, and she's absolutely in love with him or whatever. They're engaged to be married. He's a doctor, so he gets sent off to war to be a doctor. And it follows the total trope of, I got raped or date raped or something like that, and it wasn't my fault at all. But now I'm pregnant, so I'm just not going to tell my fiance, husband, love of my life, soulmate, whatever. I'm not going to tell him that I was raped and drugged and now I'm pregnant, because, why he would just think me dirty and terrible and it's all my fault. So what am I going to do? I'm going to break his heart, kick him to the curb, and go marry my rapist. Sounds like a plan. No. Trash. Absolute trash. Can't do it. Can't do it. So I DNF the second I saw that trope coming. Done. Trash. Donate. I don't know. For a character to have no constitution like that, and that's part of the trope that I hate, the non-communication trope, where if you just communicate with that other character, you could solve all your problems. But no, we're going to spend 500 pages not communicating, and I'm going to do this really stupid thing instead, when all I could do was just talk to you and everything would be fine. Nope, trash. I'm donating it. Next book that I read are actually 2 graphic novels, and it was the first 2 books in my Tintin bind-up. So this is volume 1, so there's Tintin in America, Cigars of the Pharaoh, and the Blue Lotus. I have not read the Blue Lotus yet. These are all rereads for me. I've read all of them when I was younger, like 12, 13 years old, and they're so nostalgic, and they're so good. The only thing about these, like, I gave them both 3 stars, I believe, because reading them as an adult, there's some problematic issues. Granted, these were written in, like, the 30s and 40s. Let me make sure. Yeah, the first copyright is 1945. So this was written a long time ago. These were hugely popular in Europe. They take place mostly in Europe and Germany. I believe Tintin himself is German. So they, you have to think about the times when this was written, and it's been republished multiple times because they're very beloved. But, yeah, and the guy who writes them is Danish, or not Danish, Dutch, I think, Dutch or German, somewhere in that area. But they're very problematic. Like, the art, here, let me see if I can find the one piece of art where it is just very problematic, where, like, the language isn't bad. I mean, it's a little bit old school because of the time it was written, but it's not the worst thing ever. Like, here, this is Tintin in America. Like, here he's meeting a Native American person, and he calls him a Red Indian. And, like, the way they address the Native Americans, like, it's very stereotypical. And the way they act, the way the Native Americans act is considered very stereotypical in not a nice way. And that, you have to, I struggled with it a little bit, but then, just remembering this is the time it was written in, and that's going to happen like that. Let's see, where's the one I'm looking for? Is it in the next book, maybe? It's like towards the beginning, I thought. Oh yeah, it should be like right here. Let me get back on the boat. Oh, okay. So right here, let's see if you can see this. Like right here. Hopefully it focused. That's portrayal of an African American person. So the issue with that is, they do the kind of like the blackface paint, which, is totally not okay now. It is totally racist. So, I mean, that, if you can overlook that, they don't make them talk in that really terrible kind of like, if you read Civil War era books that were written in like the 30s and stuff like that, like I just did, which will be my September wrap-up, where they make them talk like they're uneducated and stupid. Like, there's none of that in here. But the way the art style is, it's from the 1940s. Like, that's how they were portrayed then. And so if you can get past that, I mean, and there's not many African Americans in these books. It's mostly just, white guys all over the place. But it's the time it was written in. They're still beloved to me. Like, they were a big part of my childhood, and I plan on rereading all of them. But I gave them both 3 stars because of the problematic things. And I can see them, and this is one of those ones where I love them, but I can see the problematic issues with them. This book I read in the month of August was my biggest disappointment probably of this year. And that was Pieces of Her by Karen Slaughter. I gave this 2 stars. 2 stars. I'm shook. Like, I was so excited for this release. I bought this full price on Amazon because I had to have it. I'm a Karen Slaughter junkie. I am trash for Karen Slaughter. She writes such good mystery thrillers with just enough violence and gore. Like, Pretty Girls is probably one of my favorite books that she's written. I love the Grant County series, all that, but this one, I just the struggle was real. Leanne from Literary Diversions, her and I have the exact same feelings on this one. Her and I actually ended up reading this one together. It was not a buddy read, but she got it the same time that I did, and so we kind of were reading it in tandem. And she finished before me, and I texted her when I was about 200 pages through. I didn't text her, I sent her a message, and I was like, hey, like, is this gonna get me better? Like, cause I'm struggling with this, and I usually don't struggle with Karen Slaughter. And she wrote me back, she's like, honestly, no, it doesn't get better at all. This is totally different than any other Karen Slaughter book that I've ever read. It's not nearly as graphic as her other ones. Not to say that you have to have graphic violence to make a good mystery thriller horror, but I mean, her books in the past have always been usually family drama centered a little bit, and then there's a really nasty thing that happens or a mystery, and there's gore and all that, but the story is just like, keep turning the pages. I was struggling to pick this one up. Like, I guessed within, like, those 100 pages, first 100 pages, I guessed what the twist was. I knew exactly what it was. Did I care? No. I mean, it was just so stupid. And this has in it one of the most annoying things in literature that I hate, and I'm going to put this down because it's heavy. She did the trope, well, it's not a trope. Her main character, Andy, short for Andrea, wait, before I even get to that, I should probably tell you what this book is about. Like, epic fail. So I'll hold it back up. Pieces of Her is about a girl named Andy and her mom named Laura. And at the very beginning of the book, they are shopping in a mall, and they go to a diner to eat, and a shooter comes in, and Andy's cowered on the floor, and her mom stands up to the shooter, and that starts a domino effect of events to where Andy is trying to figure out who her mom really is, because her mom had acted out a character. So she's like, well, Laura must have had some kind of past life that I don't know about. So she goes kind of on this journey to figure out who her mom really is. And it goes from there. So now I'm going to put this back down. But as I was saying, the thing that she did that I can't stand is Andy has no constitution. This girl is one of the most whiny, obnoxious characters I've ever read. Like, she is, what, 22, 23? She's early 20s, trying to figure out what to do with her life. And this girl acts like a goddamn 8-year-old. Like, she acts like a toddler. I mean, she cowers on the floor. Like, you know, any mention of anything that's not within her normal little bubble world, she loses her mind. And this girl has a job and is like a functioning adult to a degree, but like, there's no reason for her to act like that. And even throughout the book, then the parts that I read, because I ended up DNFing it at like 200 pages, I literally skipped to the end to see if I was correct, and I was, and read the little tiny bit at the end, and that was it. And it was totally anticlimactic, and it was like, I'm glad I didn't waste my time reading those extra 200 pages just to get to an ending I already figured out. But Andy was just terrible, and throughout the book, she never got her constitution. She was still a whining, sniveling little child in a 20-year-old's body with no reason to be, and I just can't do that. I do not like characters like that. I love characters that are unlikable. I find them very fun to read about. I love villains. I love most kind of characters, but I just cannot with characters like that. I just can't do it. And so I gave this one 2 stars. It was a huge disappointment to me, and I was really bummed I paid full price for it, but my library's getting a new copy. And the last book that I read in the month of August was Jane Doe by Victoria Helen Stone. Yes, Victoria Helen Stone. Hopefully I can get an image up here. It was an ebook that I read, and I gave it 5 stars. This book is about a woman named, what's her name? Jane. A woman named Jane. And at the beginning of the book, you learn that she's a sociopath. Self-diagnosed sociopath. But she's not your psycho, go out and kill people, like, I'm gonna murder dead animal sociopath. She just knows that she doesn't interact well with people socially, and she can see people's BS a mile away. So she knows, she's like the queen of manipulation. She knows that other people are trying to manipulate her, and she pretty much totally shuts them down. So reading from a character perspective like that was very entertaining. But the whole premise of the story is she quit her very high paying not finance, she works in marketing. Very high class, like lawyer marketing business job where she lived in Asia and made a crap ton of money. She put that job on hold to work as a temp at this really tiny firm to get close to this guy named Steve. And it kind of goes from there. And as you go, you see why she wants to get close to Steve, and she pretty much wants to tear his life apart. And I'm not going to spoil it, but she tells you pretty close in why she wants to do this. And the book was just very well written. It was very interesting to read from her point of view. I wouldn't say that she was an unlikable character, because I loved her. I thought she was awesome. I loved how real she was. And the way sociopathy was portrayed, it wasn't portrayed like, you know, Ted Bundy is a sociopath. It was portrayed as there are people who live with this every day and still function, but they're just not like us, I guess. But the story is really fast-paced. I read it in 2 sittings. It was one of those ones where I could not stop reading the book. It was so good. I highly recommend it. I think I got it for... Was it on my Kindle Unlimited? It was either free on Kindle Unlimited or I got it as my book of the month for, like, the Kindle First for September, I believe. But yeah, anyways, it was fantastic. Like, there's not much more I can say without spoiling it. It was just a really, really, really good book. That's it, guys. So here are my 10 books, or part of the 10 books that I read in the month of August. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, subscribe, like, all the good stuff, and I'll see you next time. Bye!